We've heard a lot about no-knock warrants over the past couple of years after police shot and killed Breonna Taylor in March of 2020. Louisville, Kentucky officers broke down her door just after midnight as part of a narcotics investigation centered on a man Taylor previously dated. And when her current boyfriend fired a single shot in what he claims was self-defense, police fired 32 shots, hitting Taylor 6 times and killing her instantly. And while the detective was later indicted for wanton endangerment of, get this, the neighbors, no one was ever charged for Taylor's killing. But no-knock warrants are far from new. Taylor was killed a decade after a no-knock raid in Detroit when a SWAT team threw a flashbang into the wrong apartment, burst in and fired, instantly killing 7-year-old Ayanna Jones, who was sleeping on the couch next to her grandmother. And it was just 3 months ago the police shot and killed 22-year-old Amir Locke just 9 seconds into an early morning raid in Minneapolis. He too had been sleeping on the couch and was neither named in the warrant nor a target of the investigation. But according to reporting in the Washington Post, 29 states, including Massachusetts, and 21 cities now have some form of restriction on no-knock warrants. But according to the Washington Post investigation, 22 people have been killed by police in such raids across the country since 2015, and many more have had their lives turned upside down, as the Post's 6-part podcast recounts.
This door right there is where the battering ram hit. This door flew open. All of this was knocked off, and the bang is what woke me up. And then I kept sitting there trying to, focus and understand what it was. And they came and put me on the floor right there, put the gun in my head and stuff, and told me that they had a search warrant to search my property. I was already in cuffs when they told me about the warrant.
The podcast is called Broken Doors. It digs into some of the many troubled aspects of no-knock warrants, including how easy it is to get one, the frequent lack of accountability surrounding them, and the lasting pain of those they affect, like Breonna Taylor's mother.
I can't believe that people are still doing this thing, and here we are coming up on March the 13th again, and no one's been held accountable for what happened to Breonna. And to have to stomach this day all over again is insane to me.
I'm joined now by the 2 reporters behind the series, Jenn Abelson and Nicole Dungca, both from the investigative unit of the Washington Post, known to us here as the Boston Globe South. They both were formerly of the Boston Globe Spotlight team. Great to see you both, and congratulations on terrific work.
Thanks for having us.
Nicole, if I can start with you, I know you were working on police issues. Was it the killing of Breonna Taylor that redirected you to these warrants?
Yeah, I think Jen and I have been working on police accountability since 2020. And when we looked closer at the killing of Breonna Taylor, that's when I think both of us really woke up to what the idea of a no-knock warrant is. And so we wanted to see across the country, using a database that the Washington Post actually keeps up of fatal shootings by police, how many of those shootings actually came from no-knock warrants. And so that's when we started down this road of trying to find those 22 people since 2015 who have been killed while police have been executing no-knock search warrants.
And we should say, I was stunned, but maybe I shouldn't have been. States don't keep track of this. The feds don't keep track of this. So you had to make track of it. Most people know a little bit about search warrants, Jen. A typical search warrant, it's authorized by a court. A police officer or officers go to a door, knock on the door, say, "Hi, police are here." A no-knock warrant is legal authorization, essentially for violent entry with no notice to the occupants. What's the threshold that police are supposed to meet before a judge approves such a warrant?
So you've got it exactly right. I mean, no-knocks are one of the most aggressive and intrusive forms of policing, where they essentially just break down your door without warning. And before they do so, they're supposed to go to a judge and provide specific reasons why they need to use this kind of force. Is there some sort of danger to officer safety? Are they worried about the destruction of drugs and other evidence? And so that's what they're supposed to be doing. It's not necessarily a very high bar, but there is supposed to be some specifics to the case, and a judge is expected to review each individual case. But what we found is that doesn't always happen.
Well, flesh it out a little bit, Jen. When you said that doesn't always happen, often it seems to me from listening to your work is the approval is perfunctory, sometimes without any questions of the police officer involved, sometimes without even any personal interaction. It's now permitted to be done online. So there's not much scrutiny in many of these approvals by the court. Correct, Jenn?
I think we found that was exactly the case, that there were so many instances where there seemed to be no pushback, no questioning of the claims that police were making. And you have to understand that so many of these are for drug searches, and they often rely on confidential informants. So these are unnamed individuals who often have a reason to be cooperating with police, and there seemed to be very little resistance, questioning of what police officers were asking for, asking basic questions like, are there children in the home? Do you have the right address? Who else might be living there?
You know, there's so many cases, so many incredible cases to talk about and experience pain over. But Nicole, could we talk about Ricky Keaton in Monroe County, Mississippi in 2015? What happened in that situation?
Yeah, I think if you listen to the first 3 episodes, that Jenn has really taken the lead on that story there. Ricky Keaton was shot in his own trailer by sheriff's deputies in Monroe County, Mississippi. And there were a lot of questions about why they were there and how it was approved. And I think Jenn and supervising senior producer Rena Flores, they went down to Monroe County, and what they found went even beyond no-knock warrants in a lot of ways. There were a lot of allegations of corruption and all sorts of issues with the sheriff's office. And she can talk a little bit more about what she found there.
Please do. 49 shots from what I recall from your reporting, Jenn. What were some of the issues in the situation with Ricky Keaton?
Yeah, so Ricky Keaton was a man who was living in a mobile home in a trailer with his girlfriend, longtime girlfriend, Wanda Segal. And he was a suspected drug dealer. There had been no actual controlled drug buy. There had been very little surveillance, according to the documents that we had seen. But one night at 1 a.m., after a traffic stop, they decided to raid his home, the sheriff's deputies there. And so they showed up at 1 a.m. and tried to break down his door. And he was inside with his girlfriend and supposedly had no idea what was happening. He grabbed not a firearm, but he just had a pellet gun, which is essentially a BB gun. And he came to the door thinking that they were intruders. And the deputies ended up shooting more than 49 bullets or so into the side of his trailer, killing him. And his girlfriend was inside. She survived.
You know, there's some incredible sound here. I'm going to play some of it. The first is, I believe, a secret recording made just the day after the shooting. The female voices you'll hear are his niece and daughter, and the other voice is the sheriff in Monroe County, Cecil Cantrell. Here they are.
I mean, we want to know why it had to be done in a dirty way like that.
It was not done in a dirty way.
It had to be.
It was done in a
when you're waking somebody up in the middle of the night.
What was your reaction to that, Jenn, when you first heard it?
I mean, it was really startling to hear. I've covered a lot of stories around policing and police accountability, and I'd never heard sort of a family confronting the man in charge in the aftermath of a deadly raid. And they were asking the very same questions, I think, that Nicole and I kept coming across, which is, why did you have to do this in the middle of the night? Why couldn't you knock and come to the door?
Well, even more incredible than that, at least to me, and I'm guessing to you, was your interview, Jenn, with the sheriff himself. Could you set this up in just a couple of seconds, and then we'll hear the sound and what happened between you and the sheriff?
Absolutely. So I went with our audio producer, Rena Flores, to the Sheriff Cantrell's house in Mississippi, and we showed up without calling ahead of time. He was very happy to sit down with us, and we were on his porch talking about his time as sheriff there, answering all sorts of questions. But as I started digging in specifically about no-knock raids, what was happening, how often they were happening, did he give approval, he started to become a little more tense and a little more agitated until we have this moment which you're about to play.
Here it is right here.
And you have no idea of how often they were used or sort of how frequently?
I couldn't answer that and give you an honest answer.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate you saying that. So did you, I guess I was curious too, like,
Can
did
I
you?
say that?
No, these are my questions.
We were sitting about 2 feet away, and then the sheriff reached his arm out and made an actual grab for the notes in my lap.
She'll ask them soon. I promise I'll get through them. I want to know,
You know what you're doing? You're interrogating me.
Oh, I don't think so. I'm trying to have an interview. You want to ask me some questions? You can,
I want to see that paper.
Oh, this is my work. I can't give you my work.
That ever happened to you in your whole career before?
Absolutely not. That was a first.
I'll tell you. You know, Nicole, I mentioned, and we've all mentioned these 22 killings you discovered and these 21 no-knock warrants since 2015. What were the consequences for those responsible for the killings in those cases?
I mean, we found in most or many of the cases that charges were not brought against the officers who were involved in these. And in one of the other cases that we'll look into in episode 5, which will be released next week, we found that on a 2017 case, they're still investigating whether charges should be brought. So for a lot of these families, a lot of the friends of these people who were shot in these during these raids, they're still waiting for some accountability or for some justice. And we talked to a lot of people who were actually in the room at the time when these no-knock raids were happening, and they might have witnessed their loved one being shot and killed by police. And so being able to hear the kind of pain that they're still in years afterward was really affecting.
And by the way, to the surprise of nobody, I assume, your reporting suggests that the majority of people who were the subject of no-knock warrants were people of color, which, as I say, would surprise no one. I want to be clear here. This is not a southern state 1950s kind of movie thing. No-knock warrants, Massachusetts is not a stranger to no-knock warrants, I'm assuming. Viewers of a certain age remember probably the most notorious one when a Reverend Williams died of a heart attack when police broke into the wrong house. That was a bit ago, but it wasn't the only one. You both probably know among those 29 states, Massachusetts was one of them. And at the end of, I think it was 2020, in the police reform said if a life is allegedly in danger, if police announce themselves, and if it is certified that no one over 65 nor a minor is in the premises, a no-knock warrant can be granted. Jenn, is that sort of the typical restriction that these other 24+ states and some cities put into place after the killing of Taylor and others?
It really varies from state to state, and even federal agencies like the Department of Justice have imposed some restrictions. But I think you're right that a lot of them are restrictions versus outright bans. And I think there are a lot of changes that happen on paper, and there are these new policies. But what really matters is what happens in practice day to day. And I think we saw in Minneapolis with the killing of Amir Locke, which is a place where they had supposedly put restrictions, severe restrictions on no-knock. That's still a lot. Police that's still there were able to carry out a no-knock warrant and kill someone. So I think it really depends on leadership in police. And I just do want to say that there are a lot of people in law enforcement who feel strongly that these are important tools of policing, that they are there to protect their safety, that they do preserve evidence, and they actually thwart violence. And so while there are some agencies that are reconsidering, how frequently they're used and in what circumstances, there are still many people in the police who defend them and their existence today.
Well, Nicole, if I'm going to attempt to end on a positive note, and tell me if it's misplaced, while increased accountability is, I assume from what Jenn said, spotty, it is fair to say there is more accountability on this front than there was since the time that Breonna Taylor was killed in their own apartment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say that you saw after Breonna Taylor's killing a lot of people waking up to the fact that these even exist. And so there has been movement to do these kinds of restrictions. And there's even been movement to restrict all search warrants as well, since sometimes regular search warrants can also be dangerous. And so I think you're going to be seeing a lot of discussions about this, a lot of debates about this in the future as people know more and more about no-knock warrants and what actually happens when they're executed.
I know you know this, Nicole and Jenn, but your contribution to the criminal justice debate in this country is huge. Congratulations, and I urge everybody to listen to every minute. It's great to have you tonight. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
You can find much more information on the Broken Doors investigation and podcast at WashingtonPost.com.